Last one is a loaded one, and it rolls into the next part of discussion. Um, Somebody asked him, you know, people are wondering what you're gonna do with your coordinators. He says it's gonna take time. I gotta think about it. And then somebody asked, have you given any thought to remaining the play caller? And he didn't shoot it down. In fact, he said that there are a lot of positives to if he were to remain the play caller, primarily being that he doesn't have to worry about having to replace a play caller every year or every other year. Um, so I guess my question is, how would you feel if Dan did continue to call plays for the team?
I would prefer I would prefer that he got a coordinator to call plays, hmm, excuse me, someone to draw up plays and call them so he can concentrate on what he does best, handling the team and focusing on his head coaching duties. But if he decided to say the if he decided to stay the play calling, I wouldn't be mad at it as long as he has as long as they hired somebody to help him with that process. Like I said earlier this season, I think Dan is good at calling the plays, but now getting a piece of paper and drawing up a route and drawing up a play on the fly. I don't think that he's that guy. I don't think he's the guy that's going to be drawing up plays and creating plays. But I think if you give him the option to call the plays, he knows his personnel and he's competent enough to make the right play call. I just don't think he's going to be the one creating them. So, but me personally, I would rather have somebody doing that, somebody who can focus just on that and let him focus on what he needs to focus on the rest of the team because I think that Dan needs to lend a hand on the defensive side of the ball as well. And when he's the play caller, most of his focus is going to be on the offensive side of the ball. And you know, I, just like we I was gonna get into that later too. I think Calvin Shepard needs some help on his side of the ball. Um, I've been hearing a lot of people say that they would like for the Lions to hire not fire Calvin Shepard, but hire an older guy with some experience as an assistant defensive coach to give Shep some experience, some of their experience. And I agree with that. But I think Dan needs to be involved in all aspects of the ball. Because soon as Dan start calling plays, the special teams went downhill, the defense went downhill, and I mean the offense was still the number one offense, but it was just a struggle.
So, real quick question. Uh, your Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, more of a Dan Campbell decision, but you're Dan Campbell, and Raheem Morris calls you up, says, "Hey Dan, I know you heard the news. I'm looking for a job. I'm not quite ready to be a head coach. I think that if I can if you got a spot on your staff for a defensive coordinator, I'd love to come up to Detroit and get a chance to look and see how you do things and maybe pick up some things at the same time. I could bring my defensive expertise to the Lions. What would you say to that?"
Um, well, I mean, is he taking the defensive coordinator spot?
Yes.
Um, I think he offers them the assistant spot, man. I don't think that he's gonna fire Shep. I think
Okay.
that he said we. I think he'll say we got an assistant spot for you. You can come in and honestly, I think he'll say you can come in at the assistant coach and give our guy Shep some experience.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, then you can take over.
Yeah. If I'm Raheem Morris, I'm not doing that. But
Mm-hmm.
my point is that if you and I agree that this is what the Lions. I feel like the same way you answer that question is the same way the Lions are looking at it, and in that sense, I'm not sure why we need to. We definitely need to hire offensive coordinator. Which we were talking about David Blau. People scoff at the idea of David Blau. He doesn't have any experience as a play caller, but he is slowly becoming an offensive coordinator. He's going down the road to being an offensive coordinator. You probably will be getting him what 2-3 years ahead of when he's ready. But that's not to say that he wouldn't be able to do the job. My thing is, if you brought him in as offensive coordinator, help him come up with game plan. He's worked with Jared Goff in the past before. He was not, he was not a mobile. I mean, David Blau could run a little bit, but David Blau was David Blau. He was what he was. But you bring in David Blau and you let Dan Campbell continue to call the plays because if you are mentoring essentially Kelvin Shepard, then by that mentality, you are saying that we got time. There's no urgency that we got to win next year. We're just gonna roll into it now, and it's not to say that you're gonna punt the season because Dan Campbell as offensive coordinator, he did just fine. He did slightly better than John Morton. With John Morton calling the plays, the Lions average 30 points per game. Dan Campbell, they average 27 points per game. John Morton, 226 passing yards per game. Dan Campbell, 278 passing yards. John Morton, 125 rushing yards. Dan Campbell, 116 rushing yards. And on third down, Morton converted 36% of the time, and Dan Campbell converted 41% of the time. So if there's no urgency to move on the defensive coordinator position, um, based on what the Lions do, that's where I'm at, man. Everything that I say about the Lions from now on, I'm basing it from a Lions standpoint because I've just accepted that the Lions will never do things that I think make the most sense. They're gonna do things that are comfortable and give their employees the benefit of the doubt. That's not to say again that they're punting the season. That's more so to say that we believe that hey, maybe things will change.
I mean, when I say you want someone to mentor him, I still think he has the capability to have a top tier defense because he had it at one point this year. Um, but my thing is, if his defense stays healthy, um, then I think Calvin is in. I think Shep is in full control because when his defense was healthy, we didn't have any problems out of the defense. The problem with him was he always come in with a good defensive plan, but guys started to go down and his defense started to slip a little bit. And then the veteran guys started to figure out some of the things that he wanted to do, and he didn't make adjustments well. So when I say you need a veteran guy to mentor him, what I mean is to help him out in those situations. Because I still think that Shep is a capable defensive coordinator. So I don't mean it in the sense of there's no sense of urgency with him because there was a time where Shep was doing so good that everybody was like, he ain't gonna be here next year. He gonna get a head coaching job. There was like, matter of fact, there was like LSU might snatch him in the middle of the season. So I think when I say mentor, I don't mean like it's it's going to take a while for him to get the defense and thing. I just mean somebody to give him suggestions to help him keep that defensive rolling on the top tier.
I understand what you're saying. Essentially, with a little bit of guidance and grooming, he could be the next best thing. I understand that. But there's also in my mind the premise of Family Guy, Peter Griffin, and the mystery box. You know, I could take the boat or I could take the mystery box. And for all we know, the mystery box might be a boat. So, I can stick with Shep and he might turn into the next best thing. At the same time, Raheem Morris has done it as a defensive coordinator, and he's even had some head coaching experience. So he's seen a lot. He's seen more than Shep has. I'm not advocating for firing Shep. I'm just saying what Dan Campbell said, which is everything is on the table. They don't want to leave no stone unturned. I don't know how true that is, but that's what he said. So that's what I got to go off of. And
Well, the only reason I don't think they're going to fire Shep is because he just got the job, and it's not. And like I said, if he had came out and it was a disaster, he did terrible, then I would say yeah. But he showed sparks of he showed sparks of being a really good defensive coordinator. It wasn't consistent all season long, but like I said, he lost his entire secondary, and I think that was a big factor in how he did it.
yeah, and he's gonna run into veteran quarterbacks again in the future. He's gonna run up against good quarterbacks. We got Josh Allen on the schedule next year. We got Drake May on the schedule next year. So he's gonna see that again. And I don't think I agree with you. I don't think they're gonna fire Kelvin Shepard. I think there's a very small chance that they're gonna fire Kelvin Shepard. But I don't want to fire Kelvin Shepard either. But if I had to make that choice, me personally, I'm gonna go with the proven commodity.
So while we're on coordinators, let me ask you: the Lions fired Johnny Morton. So are there any offensive coordinators that caught your eye, or any prospects that you think that the Lions should hire, or names out there? I know you said I know you throw out a defensive name, or if they don't fire Calvin Shepard, uh, assistants that you think would take the job. I heard Spinny and Woolworth say Eberflus or Pete Carroll.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
No and no. I think both positions will not be filled by somebody who's held that title before. And I'm okay with that. I definitely don't think that you'll get an assistant defensive coordinator who was a defensive coordinator. Uh, they're gonna likely find another defensive coordinator job. Guys like Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz, that'd be great if Jim Schwartz decided, hey, I'm tired of coaching like that. I just want to be an assistant and I'll come over there. Cool. I'll be cool with that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he will find another defense coordinator. I think all these guys are going to find defensive coordinator's position. Maybe the Cardinals coach, come to find out he was a defensive coordinator. I thought he was an offensive guy, but turns out he was a defensive coordinator. I don't know much about him. He didn't do very good with the Cardinals. So he might have to go back to the drawing board and assistant job might be something. I think his name Rich Gannon, I believe that's his name. And as far as the offensive coordinator, yeah, I don't think you're going to get. I don't think they're going to go after a proven commodity at offensive coordinator. because if you do, they're going to end up calling plays. And I'm actually believing that Dan Campbell is leaning more towards calling plays than not, and which is why I think David Blau makes the most sense because David Blau is somebody who can learn, he could give his input, and at the same time, he's not going to, he he knows his role on the Lions staff, and they like that. They like that this guy's been in the building, and he's not going to come in here and try to change the way that we do things around here.
I actually got the opposite. I actually got the opposite feeling from the way Dan Campbell answered that question. Will he call plays next year? It didn't seem like to me like he really wanted to. It seemed like he was open to it, but like you said, he was like, I'm gonna do what's best for the team, and like, yeah, he did say that he don't have to worry uh about calling plays, but it didn't really seem like. I mean, his mannerisms and the way he was moving when they asked him that question, it kind of his body movement, his body motion kind of was like, I don't really want to call plays. I mean, if I could, if that's the best option, I do it. But I really just want to go. No, it just felt to me like he like I really just want to go back to doing what I was doing, but I ain't closed off to it. If I can't find nobody, I do it. But it just didn't feel to me like he really wanted to do it like that.
You think the best option for the team is for him to go in there and say, "Well, we couldn't find nobody. I guess it's gonna be me."
I mean, well, of course he won't phrase it like that. I'm
Well, no, but
saying,
regardless of how he phrases it, what it is well, I didn't think anybody else was good enough that we interviewed, so I guess I got to do it. Like that's I don't like that either.
no, I don't think if they go the route of Dan Campbell calling plays, I feel like they will go. It would be they didn't like the feel of anybody that they interviewed, and the best option was for them to hire somebody that could um give Dan guidance and draw plays for Dan to call the plays. Be a lot of it'll be more people available, and I will have to do a deep dive into who's available. Would you want the Lions to make a move really quick, or would you be happy if it took them a while to make a decision?
I'm fully gonna trust you to go out there and find some names because I am not going to do that. I think that there are again, I believe there are so many different coaches in the NFL. Like I said, you got proven commodities that have been coordinators. You got quarterbacks coaches. You have old coaches who aren't going to get a defensive coordinator position, but they could be moving in. Brian Dable, former Giants coach. People are throwing that name around. I'm not with that either. But I have no. I'm a I'm in the position which you can say what you want about that position, but I'm in the position that hey, when they hire somebody, I'll make my judgment then because there's just way too many people. There's and then there's it's not like it's not like getting ready for the NFL draft. I can't go out there and look at tape on you calling plays for an offense or a defense. I can't even look
Well, no,
at
it will probably just be the name and and what you know of them, like what they're known for, and do
yeah,
they
but
fit?
I'm basing that off of what? And what I'm basing that off of how their quarterback performs out there. Because if I'm watching, they're talking about Cliff Kingsbury and how he did with the Washington Commanders. Well, Marcus Mariota, Jaden Daniels, Josh Johnson, those guys are not Jared Goff. Brian Dable had Josh Allen and Jackson Dart. Again, those guys are not Jared Goff. So I can't even really, I don't have enough. I don't have enough evidence, or I don't have enough information to make a good. I can, and it's not like I can sit there, and even if I can sit there and watch a Netflix quarterback about assistant coaches in the NFL, even if I had something like that, then I feel like I'll be able to make a decision. But I really got nothing to go off of. So whoever they hire, I'll do some research on them then. But I'm gonna leave it to them.
Off the top of your head, you don't have one name that you would be happy with.
Again, man, it sounds crazy, but I would like a young, up and coming person. And right now, David Blau fits that bill. This is coming from the guy who says that the Lions spent too much time going with people that they already know and everything from within, but just David Blau really does make a ton of sense. He's on his way up. He's young. He's got a lot of ideas. Former quarterback, Hank Fraley, offensive line coach. I'm surprised that they haven't brought that name up more. But outside of the building, in terms of offensive coordinator, no. Because all the offensive coordinators, man, I'll ask you this question. What team has a quarterback like Jared Goff?
The Seahawks.
So if you told me, but again, like you said, the Seahawks, their offensive coordinator is still in the playoffs, so you can't talk to them unless they make it to the Super Bowl in that bye week. Or you could go for the quarterback's coach for the Seattle Seahawks and promote him to offensive coordinator. If they went that route, I guess that's where I'm at. But I can't even say that because shit, Sam Darnold did this last year. So maybe I should go for the quarterback's coach for the Minnesota Vikings. Or maybe it wasn't a quarterback's coach. Maybe it was Kevin O'Connell, who I think is a great offensive coach. So I don't have a name.
Detroit basketball.